And some call her the goddess of African cool. Her voice has been compared to those of Amy Winehouse, Miriam Makeba, and Billie Holiday.
Her stage debut earlier this month, all the way from South Africa. Welcome to the show, multi-award-winning singer-songwriter Simphiwe Dana. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Good. Thank you so much for having me.
Now, this is amazing because you've been regarded as one of the, best, most up-and-coming, just accomplished African singers on the scene right now. And how has all this, fame come to you? How does it make you feel?
Well, it's lovely.
Hair is amazing. Took so.
And to be recognized for what you do. I just love having the opportunity to write.
Oh, it's so cool.
Thank you.
Okay.
You have been compared to some phenomenal vocalists out there, from Billie Holiday to Amy Winehouse. Oh, look at that face.
Aisha?
Does that put pressure on you? What do you think about those comparisons?
It's inspiring a whole lot, and it means that I'm doing something right because those are people that I have lots of respect for myself, and I'm hoping that one day I will be able to look back and say, I filled those shoes and plus more.
Well, who were some of your musical influences growing up?
Well, I would say that when I started singing or loving music, I then got introduced to people like Miriam Makeba, Fela Kuti, Bob Marley, Billie Holiday, and so on and so on. Yeah.
But it's not only your vocal style, but it's also what you're singing about and writing about. And so talk a little bit about those influences, because you were only, correct me if I'm wrong, 14 years old when Nelson Mandela became president of South Africa. So you have very distinct memories and images of your homeland pre-apartheid, post-apartheid.
Well, it's really amazing because I didn't grow up in that South Africa. You must remember that, the country was compartmentalized into little blocks, according to ethnicity. So most of us were not necessarily a part of South Africa. We were locked out in the homelands. So I only got to experience that South Africa really post 1994, and it was a revelation to me as much as it would have been to someone else from a different country.
Well, how did being part of that post-apartheid generation, the first generation, out of really influence and affect your music? After 1994, just being in the atmosphere of everything that was going on.
We first went through a phase where we felt the need to celebrate, because we had been through so much, So you saw music like Kwaito, come up in South Africa, which is like a groovy sound, and then out of that was born Afro pop, which would be your bongo muffins and your mafikizolos, And then now we are slowly getting to a point where we are more reflective of our responsibilities and what we have to do, what our contribution to the struggle would be as artists. So our music moving forward from now on is more reflective.
And you didn't have to do that. There are plenty of artists that are successful because of their vocal capabilities, their stage performances, but you're also someone who is described as a political activist. And you have made your music part of that. What made you decide to make them compatible, work hand in hand together?
Growing up, I really loved taking in stray animals and nursing them back to health, So I think even I have got that kind of character, so I apply that character to my music. I want my music to have more meaning, and I want to leave the world a better place than I found it in, So when it comes to politics, it makes me uncomfortable when my music is linked to politics, but I understand why that is so, because my music deals a lot with the human condition, and it just so happens that the human is the political, our existence, our everyday lives are very political, So I don't necessarily I wouldn't necessarily say.
But you wouldn't describe yourself as a political activist, is that what you're saying?
No, I wouldn't. I'm an artist, you know, and I come from the same brood of artists who felt that the podium that they had was a space that they could use to change their world.
You talked about the music being more reflective, but I'm curious as to what you think the important issues of the day are that you are now singing and writing about.
Well, in my country, I don't know about the rest of the world, but self-determination seems to be an issue, you know. It is very difficult for anyone to express the best of who they are in their lives when they have self-esteem issues, you know. So in my country, we have to preach a lot about self-love and self-determination.
I'm glad you're doing that and helping bring up the younger generation and everyone around you.
We're
But
trying.
I think one of the things that's interesting is that you've said you've always wanted to be a singer, but you grew up in a village where there wasn't access to radio or much music influences at all. So how did you really get into the music industry, and what was your first exposure to real music?
Well, I mean, just because there were no radios does not mean that there was no music.
Right, you sing singing yourself, right?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a very much a cappella environment where, you know, your voice was your instrument, and I think I've carried that with me throughout my life and now my career. I actually write mostly a cappella when I write. You know, where I grew up, music was a part of everyday life. You know, you couldn't really divorce music from, you know, almost everything went with music. There was a soundtrack to every moment and every chore. So that would be my earliest influences when it comes to music from my society.
Okay.
And right now I understand that you're actually working on a book called A Renegade called Simphiwe.
No.
The title seems like it says it all. So tell us, what is this about?
Well, it is someone who has known me for a while, who is an academic, and who has studied my life and feels that it makes a good study for feminism in my country. In a nutshell, you know, way beyond just my music, which she really gets into and dissect. She's very interested in the dynamics of feminism in South Africa. So it's not me who wrote the book, it's her.
Okay, well, you know, bring up a good point about the book being used in different ways, because I hear that your music is also being used at Oxford in the curriculum there. What are they doing with your music?
I think they're very much interested in how we put together harmonies in my country, or how I put together harmonies and our rhythms, you know, and I mean, it's good to know that people are interested enough in your work to want to learn it and pass it on to future generations.
And also appreciate it as well.
Yeah.
So I got to know about your U.S. tour. You've been doing some spots here in the U.S. for the first time. I mean, you toured all over the world, but this is your first time actually being here in the U.S.
It's my very first time.
Well, how was it being received by a U.S. audience?
It's, you know, I've always been quite scared of the U.S. audiences, you know, because
Why?
of the heavy influence their music has on us in South Africa. I mean, if you turn any radio station there, you know. So I was always worried how our music would be received in return. So it's been amazing to see, you know, how people are like wowed by what you do over there, you know. And I think it's time for those kinds of exchanges when it comes to music, you know. Miriam Makeba came here and she worked with so many beautiful artists, you know, and she became very good friends with Nina Simone, you know, and maybe it's time for that cross-pollination of creative ideas again.
And see the influence of your music and other African artists take place on the American music industry as well.
Yes.
All right,
Thank you
well,
so much.
Simphiwe Dana, thank you so much for joining us here on the set.
Thank you for having me.
And much success. I'm sure you'll have tons of it. You're watching Arise Entertainment 360.